in the entire world. You want to hear something amazing? So they
What is that?
so we terminate you, and I said, I'm not selling the test. I am not going to use my reputation to shove this thing down the throats of patients that I care about. Some of the clinicians that have been in my business since we started that business, some of the employees that are there, some of the practicing clinicians are some of the best people in the entire world. You want to hear something amazing? So they
What is that, Rob?
they're now launching the so on January 4th, I have the Ultimate Human. It's my podcast. They went out on January 4th and bought ultimatehuman.com. I have the Ultimate Human. They bought ultimatehuman.com, and now they're launching Ultimate Human Analysis. The 10X brand has been so damaged and so destroyed. And it had, look at that. See any similarity between that logo and this logo?
Look it. We are back. I am Dave, 10-year intellectual property attorney, dealing with everything from patents, copyrights, trade secrets, as well as trademarks. And we have a good one for you guys today. This is a reaction video I'm doing from Gary Brecka. He was on a PBD podcast here recently over the last week, and kind of talking about his maybe run-in, unfortunately, with Grant Cardone, and maybe Grant Cardone's partner with the human analysis, the ultimate human analysis. And again, I have some thoughts on this one, so please hit the like button for the YouTube algorithm, as well as hit the subscribe button to be a part of the IP community here on Everything Intellectual Property. And just kind of give you guys a lay of the land, because I'm not playing the entire podcast. I'm just kind of playing a snippet here. And prior to the snippet where he starts to kind of get off into Grant Cardone and the ultimate human analysis and all that stuff, it seems like he was kind of talking about the business relationship between him and Grant Cardone, where it seems like Gary, he had a genetic testing company, as well as or was providing, I should say, genetic testing as well as supplements to his customers. Obviously, he talked about that, you just heard him, that he has a podcast called The Ultimate Human. And again, like I said, he was selling supplements, it looks like, as well as genetic testing to his customers. Grant Cardone, it seems like they end up partnering, where now I wouldn't even call it partnering, where Grant Cardone for $250,000 bought 80+%, I think it was like 82% of the company. So again, Grant Cardone is essentially the owner of the company, majority share owner of the company. And it seems like Gary and his wife, which, as I continue to play the video, he will kind of explain a little bit in more detail. But him and his wife kind of retained maybe like 20-something% or 7. It was what, 82, say 18% of the company. So, I mean, obviously, if I own 80+% of the company, I'm making this. I have the decision-making authority. I don't have to kind of go to you for, okay, do I want to do this? Do I want to do that? But again, this is, I think, ultimately this is a good learning lesson in a lot of ways. Number one, if you are selling your company, I would imagine he said $250,000 that he kind of brought, Grant Cardone bought other company. And I think, like I said, his wife, maybe him and his wife retained 18%. So I would imagine that the company was probably valued at that point of what, $300,000, which means that you're probably doing anywhere from $10,000 to $20,000 a month in sales at that point in time. Again, he's going to talk about it a little bit once we play the video, but Grant Cardone got the company to the point where they're doing, you guys got to think about this. He was probably doing $10,000 to $20,000 a month in sales. However, Grant Cardone, once he kind of bought the company more or less for 82% for that $250,000, and all of a sudden they're doing $17 million a month in sales. So you go from doing maybe $10,000 to $20,000 a month in sales to doing all of a sudden $17 million in sales, because you're kind of behind that 10X brand, which that's the part that I don't like when he's talking about the 10X brand has been so kind of damaged, or whatever the case may be, because they kind of took your company that was doing $10,000 to $20,000, and all of a sudden you're doing $17 million. Yeah, I mean, you have to read in between the lines on this one. I know a lot of people, like Grant Cardone, like maybe Trump and some other people, are it can be polarized in whether or not you like them or you don't like them. But let's not kind of mix the facts of the situation. If you sold your company for $250,000 to Grant Cardone, that means that you're probably doing anywhere from $10,000 to $20,000 a month in sales, which means you got to probably 1x, 2x on your company. And Grant Cardone did, all of a sudden you're doing $17 million a year in sales. Come on now, let's kind of put things in perspective. But I think the more important part for me, at least as an IP attorney, is protecting the intellectual property. Number one, again, he talks about the ultimate human analysis, which they end up trademarking and getting the domain and things and on. He talked about having the podcast being the ultimate human, which he doesn't even have a trademark on it. So again, at the bare minimum, to the extent that you're coming up with a podcast, you need to get that trademark, the podcast, the name of that podcast trademark. So that's, I guess, the first mistake that he made. The second mistake that he made is, again, at the end of the day, you don't own a company. So if this guy, like I said, I'm going to play the video, but if Grant Cardone and his team is kind of doing different things and you feel like you are not aware or in a loop, you only own 18% of the company. I'm not kind of checking with minority shareholders or minority owners in terms of kind of when I'm start to make decision-making authority of this thing. And then I guess the number three thing before we get back to playing a video to kind of hear what Gary has to say is, hey, man, if you would have protected your intellectual property, if you would have got the trademark, the ultimate human analysis, or the ultimate human experience, whatever the case may be, if you would have trademarked the podcast, you would have been able to get more money from Grant Cardone and the team, because not only are you selling the operation company, but you're also selling the IP of the company. I think Mike McFall, who's the owner of Big B Coffee, which is a rival to Starbucks, they do about $200 million a year in annual revenue. He talked about how he has two separate companies. He has a company that owns operations of selling coffee, and then he has a company that owns the IP, all the Big B IP and everything like that, the trademarks, things of that sort. And the actual IP company licensed to the operating company the right to use all the intellectual property, and the operating company paid them, I think, like a 10% royalty. So again, if the company is doing $200 million a year in revenue, they're paying the IP company $20 million a year, which gives credibility and authenticity to the actual IP. So again, if this gentleman, Gary, had his company set up in a similar way in terms of, okay, even if your company was doing $120,000 to $240,000 a year in sales, but you're licensing the IP that you have from the ultimate human and that kind of whole, the ultimate human experience, so forth and so on, for the podcast, for the supplements, for the actual genetic testing. If you had the trademark for that, and then you're licensing those trademarks to the company that was kind of actually selling the supplements and the podcast and things of that sort, I would 100% guarantee you that Grant Cardone would have paid you more than $300,000 or $250,000 for your company. And I can guarantee you that, because now you have the operations, but you also have the IP behind it. But you didn't have any IP, at least according to what you're saying and kind of what I quickly was able to look up. You didn't have any IP. Grant Cardone, he bought the company, and as most business owners do, they are looking to kind of build the brand. So they're buying more brands, they buying more companies to kind of facilitate or help out, or kind of help out the company. But then you're also buying intellectual property, trademarks, things of that sort, to kind of help continue to bolster and build that brand. So those are my initial thoughts as an IP attorney. I would love to hear from you guys in the comment section. Let's get back to the video and see what Gary has to say, because he's definitely not seems like he's okay with Grant Cardone, but maybe not Grant Cardone's partner. Let's go.
That's Cardone Ventures.
Are you serious?
That's Cardone
Are
Ventures.
you joking or are you serious?
I wish I was joking. They just started this. Yeah. So Brandon Dawson went out while I was his business partner in March of 2024, while we were still business partners, while Sage and I were running our podcast and feeding leads to 10X Health and boosting 10X Health. Brandon Dawson went out and bought a trademark from a doctor, trademark.
And again, I'm sorry to have to stop this video, but he's talking about how they're feeding leads to 10X Health to build 10X Health. Grant Cardone took your company that he bought from you, 82% of the company, for $250,000. Again, you have to read in between the lines. If he bought your company, or bought 82% of the company for $250,000, that means you probably weren't doing more than $10,000, $20,000 a year, or $10,000, $20,000 a month in sales, which he built up to $17 million. But you're saying, hey, you're feeding him leads to build up 10X Health. Come on, man. Is it an oxymoron? Do you agree with it? Do you not agree with it? I would love to hear from you guys in the comment section. Again, just from listening to the clip, and I actually like Gary, and it seems like Gary he wants to help people from a genetic testing standpoint, from a supplement standpoint, but from a business standpoint, man, like I said, we have to read in between the lines and just kind of be honest with ourselves. If you're saying that you're feeding leads from your podcast, your wife and I, to 10X Health to help build up 10X Health, yet Grant Cardone bought your company for $250,000 or bought 82% of your company for $250,000, in which he started making $17 million. That's $200 million a year. So you go from making $300,000 a year of your company, all of a sudden making $200 million a year. But you're saying that you're helping build up 10X Help. Again, I don't know. Maybe it's some stuff that is just not coming out in this interview, and that's maybe in the background that we're not privy to, but that doesn't make sense to me, at least, to say that you're helping build up 10X Health when he actually took your company from a couple $100,000 to a couple $100 million a year in sales. So that's just kind of me. But let's get off into what he says about this trademark and how Grant Cardone and his partners bought this trademark, which again, that's the power of trademarks. You need to build the trademark so that you can kind of build this brand, kind of stake your dominance. So it seems like Grant Cardone and the team was playing chess while Gary, unfortunately, was playing checkers, but let's go.
Called Ultimate Human Analysis. Never even told us. We found out he bought the trademark a few months later, and he goes, "Oh, I bought this trademark to protect you guys." And we're like, "Well, why would you buy an Ultimate Human trademark? I've got the Ultimate Human podcast." He goes, "Yeah, I brought it to protect you guys." So he went out and bought this trademark, sat on it. I sued him on the 26th of December. On the 28th of December, he went out and bought, in the name of that trademark, he bought the social media domains, Ultimate Human Analysis. Then on January 4th, a few weeks into our lawsuit, he bought ultimatehuman.com. And now he's starting Ultimate Human Community, the Ultimate Human. Look at the font, look at the coloring, look at the letters. The brand has been so tarnished that the Grant and Brandon just dropped the 10X brand like a stone. And now they're chasing the, obviously the Ultimate Human brand. We'll see how it goes. But it's just a sad story, man, because I really believed what those guys said. I believed what I heard from the stage. It was a horrible experience. I at the time where we knew we could no longer do business with them, I told Grant we wanted out. And he said, "I don't even like the space anyway. Why don't you guys make me an offer to buy my shares?" And so my wife and I ran around Wall Street, trying to raise money. We raised about $75 million. And I asked Grant to play backgammon one night, and I went up there and I said, "Look, we need to have a divorce. I don't want it to be a public divorce. I don't want to hurt the patients. I don't want to hurt the clients. I certainly don't want to hurt the employees that were with me from the beginning, these clinicians that have been with me from the beginning. Some of the most intentional, good people, really good practitioners are still on the deck of that ship." And I made him an offer. He seemed excited about the offer. He went to his partner, Brandon Dawson. Brandon was like, "Absolutely not. It's Gary trying to steal the business." And I said, "Look, just so that you know that this is an honest offer, I will not only pay you this valuation for your shares, but you can also buy my wife and I out at the same valuation. So
it's either we do it to you or you do it to us.
I'll either buy your 82% out at this valuation." And at the time I offered him $65 million.
Your 18% they could buy at the $75 million valuation.
Yeah, at the $65 million valuation. So they could buy me, our 18%, and have the entire company, or we would buy their majority interest. They said, "It's too little for you to buy our shares, and it's too much for us to buy your shares." So in other words, we don't think you're giving us enough money, but it would be too much. That valuation would be too much for your shares. So they forced us to stay in a loveless marriage, and then they wanted us to sell this abject failure of a gene test, which they know does not work. They try to hire celebrities and influencers to shove this test down people's throats. The market is picking up on the inauthenticity of the messaging, because the intention, when it becomes solely to make money and not, the intention is not to help people with their well-being, the rate of collapse was just cataclysmic, and so, I mean, it's sad, but so then we ended up in litigation.
I thought you guys were, because this business it's not a business I'm interested in getting into, because there's too many technicalities to it. And I leave it to the experts to do what they want to do with this. Trust me, like right now we have a guy that wants to do a big sponsorship for one of our events. And I cannot tell you how many questions we're asking before we take sponsorship money. We don't even take sponsorship money. The last 18 months, we gave away $6 million because we're just not doing it on the podcast. because of that specific reason. But I thought for sure you guys were going to work together for many years
I thought so
and
too.
do great things. And it's unfortunate to hear, because I think his strength of marketing and just driving and your ability to go out there and present, and you come across very likable, trusting. You just said, sometimes I've made mistakes when I said this, so
Oh, I've definitely
gains.
made mistakes.
No,
and
but what I'm saying is, all I'm saying is your approach gets me and others to say, okay, I'm willing to give this guy a shot and listen to him, especially if somebody doesn't know who you are. They haven't
Mhm.
spent time with you. But I thought you guys were going to do big things together. It's
I
unfortunate
thought so too.
that happened.
Here's the thing. We were doing big things together. What we were doing was working. It was the incessant level of greed that they said, we're going to take what's actually really working, what's scaling, and what is helping the masses. And we're going to buy a new company for ourselves. We're going to hold it for ourselves. And we're going to force all of this deal flow, that all of these people that are coming into the funnel, that were largely coming from like the podcast and stage talks and everything else, and yes, I will say Grant Cardone did a lot to elevate my awareness, and I owe him a debt of gratitude for that. But then, greed just takes over, and you say, well, we're making 17 million a month. We could make 50 million a month if we double the price of the test, if we own the genetics company, if we own the supplements, if we quadruple the price of the monthly supplements, and Gary will just shove it down their throat. And then they ran into a brick wall. I said, listen, man, you bought our company, you didn't buy our soul. And it's sad, because I want to go back out in the market and help people. I've got 21 more months on my non-compete, so I got to sit quiet in the United States, and before I can really get back to what I love to do. So I have to go outside the United States to do it while we see how the lawsuit plays out.
Well,
but it is what it is.
All the best to both of you guys. I'm
Thank
sure
you.
Grant's going to do well.
Look at it, and that's pretty much it from the interview. But again, like I said, this stuff is kind of business one-on-one. If you enter into an agreement with somebody to kind of buy the company or whatever the case may be, you're going to have non-competes in place, even though non-competes can kind of be a little bit tricky these days in the U.S. You're going to have first right of refusal, to the extent that, hey, if you're terminated or we terminate you for whatever reason, we're going to be able to buy your shares. All this stuff is business one-on-one. Seems like Gary, as PBD talked about, seems to be very likable, seems to be very trustworthy and knowledgeable. And I would imagine that he did want to really help people. But again, business, and I don't want to even say business can be dirty, but business is just business, to the extent that, hey, you're trying to make the most money with, and that may mean kind of jacking up the price of things, or maybe kind of scaling back on the quality of the product, which I'm not saying that that's the right thing to do, but that happens in business, especially when you're kind of getting bought out by a bigger company and they're trying to kind of maximize profits. And it seems like that's what maybe Grant and the team did in this case. Now, whether or not it was some kind of foul play involved, I'm not sure. It seems like it just kind of was business one-on-one, and Gary he wasn't privy to that part of it, or wasn't experienced in that part of it, and unfortunately kind of fell short. But the big thing for me, particularly being an IP attorney, is the important role of intellectual property, because Gary's talking about how Grant and a team kind of bought another company and sat on it and kind of bought these trademarks and these domain names. That's all fair play, in my opinion. That's what you should do to be able to kind of stake your dominance, kind of put your kind of stake in the ground, and kind of be able to build your moat around a particular thing. We all know the 10X brand is not going anywhere. So it's interesting that Gary is talking about how the 10X brand is being so damaged or tarnished, which I probably disagree with that from a personal standpoint. But again, the whole importance of the Ultimate Human, which again, he talked about having a podcast on the Ultimate Human. And again, at least from my trademark search, he doesn't own a trademark for it. So having a podcast, having an IP or an intellectual property, particularly the trademark in this case, is two completely different things. And whether or not you are you have a podcast and you're selling products, you need to be able to kind of trademark the name of the podcast. You need to trademark the vitamins, the supplements, the actual genetic testing that you're doing, to be able to kind of build your moat. And if Gary would have did this, I think he would have got a lot more than $250,000 for his company, because now not only does he have the operations company, but he also has an IP that's kind of backing up, giving credibility to things. So it seems like it was a big opportunity missed, in my opinion. And that's why I'm so passionate about protecting the IP, because not only do you get a chance to maximize your earning potential, as far as kind of not only having an operations company, but the IP company or the intellectual property that's kind of based on that operations company, but just kind of you're in business full force. And it seems like, again, like I said, Gary seems like to be a trustworthy guy, seems like to be a person who wants to help the people. But from a business standpoint, really, especially when you're talking about getting into a business with the big dogs, GC and his team, seemed like he maybe wasn't prepared for that. And again, they're going to try to get, especially if they're paying you kind of buy you out, they're going to try to get the best deal possible for them, which it seems like they did. And you got the short end of the stick and maybe kind of thought things were going to happen differently. But again, going forward, this is a big learning lesson to protect the IP and make sure you're reading the contract, reading the language of the contract and the small fund, and hopefully you're putting yourself in a position to the point where you are, you have some type of leverage. So let me know what you guys think in the comment section. Please hit the like button for the YouTube algorithm if you enjoyed this video, as well as hit the subscribe button to be a part of the IP community, which I would love to have you on. I thought this was an interesting one that I saw come across my timeline, and I said I had to talk about this because, again, people, they want to play business, they want to play IP, but when you're playing with experienced people, when you're playing with power players, then you find out very quickly that, oh, this is a whole different ball game than what I thought. And again, hopefully this is some type of a wake-up call for a lot of people who have podcasts, who have products, who have businesses to protect the IP, not just kind of run an operations company, but to protect the IP as well. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this one. I'll see you on the next one. You guys take care. Peace.